Yeah, no, I'm good with all of that. Absolutely.
Right, perfect. It's
Thank-
preparing. Looks like it is streaming, hopefully soon. But yeah, the any kind of like overstimulating, like any kind of like situation where the uh like in this, like in that, like you said, learning or anything like that, it's literally that's all it is. Oh, of course I should probably go ahead and mute that. There we go. Hey, we know the audio is working.
That's great.
GDPLive, it is a Sunday morning stream. I'm here. This is the host right here. This is Pat George, and I am almost through my first cup of coffee. So I think this is going to be, and we've had a very stimulating conversation. And when I say we, I talk about my guest today, which is Mr. Jay Yoder. Jay,
Pleasure to be
thanks
here.
so much for being here, buddy.
Oh, I can't thank you enough. This is so much fun. I mean, I'm by nature a talker, so anytime where I get to do that is great. My wife's sick of hearing me, so this is great. She gets a break from me.
Mine too. Hell yeah. My wife is also like she's like, oh good, I get to watch the shows I want to watch without you bitching. And I'm like, perfect. Yeah.
This is awesome. Win-win.
Yeah. Couple of windbags, get to drink some coffee and spill the tea, if you know what I'm talking about.
Heck yes.
But we were just talking about some of the like the challenges, I think. And so that's what I say. I don't want to say challenge, like there's a lot of like I have learned so much, like in a non-condescending way. I used to, you know how like people, when a lot of the censorship and a lot of the and for lack of a better term, woke stuff started coming
yeah,
out,
politically correctness, all of that.
politically
Yeah.
correct, yeah, stuff like that. When that started really to like gaining like control in like mainstream stuff, like where they're like, look, don't say that or we're gonna, take you out of here.
Yeah.
I was kind of, yeah, I was poo-pooing a lot, and I'm like, come on, free speech, man, whatever. But like, I've learned a lot about triggers, dude. Because I've when I get triggered, I was like, oh, oh, so yeah, I'm trying not to use words like challenge and stuff like
Well, I
that.
mean, some of those. Well, it's funny. Like some of those things, like for me personally, aren't a huge deal. I mean, I've as someone, growing up in it, I grew up in a very unique era. Like, obviously, well, I don't know if we're the same age. I'm just about touching 40.
Yeah, I just turned 36 in
Okay.
August, and
So I mean,
I only know that off the top of my head because it just happened.
that's happy belated birthday.
Oh, thank you. I
Yeah.
appreciate that.
I grew up in the 80s Scranton, and it's like then anything went. Like there were words I didn't know were like racial slurs and things
Yeah.
like that were just commonplace. You would hear people say that. Like once I've been living in Philly now for like the last since college, and so like things like that were in my speech that I just didn't even realize. I have a joke that I'd written that I haven't quite found a place for yet, but it was like the innuendo of like, the G word that they call Asian people, I just thought was short for good cook because I love Chinese food. You know what I mean? Like, so
actually, okay. Yeah, I see. But you also, I think, look, I'm just saying, I think you could still do the joke like that because you're making them do the work. You remember that?
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, it's like that one. He's like, well, I know this word's I forget who does the bit, but he's like, I know that's a worse word because you're not even willing to say it.
Yeah,
like
yeah. So there, it's a weird story, and I remember, and I don't know, I can't remember where I heard it, but I remember hearing the origin of that particular. It's so strange because I and this is something I was telling you. I learned about triggers, and I actually learned what actual like white privilege is, like because I was like, I grew up on a dead end street across the street from a warehouse, didn't feel privileged, but then I go, oh, I could smoke weed and not be scared that I'm going to get killed by the police.
Or even just be in a car and a police being behind you. And yeah, maybe the worst case was you're going to get a ticket.
Yeah, I'm learning the difference. But the other oh shit, I lost the train of thought. God damn it.
Well, I mean, I think to your point, when you get into those scenarios where you're, you're hearing those words. It's like a lot of it's intention. What's the speaker's intention? I think that's the biggest thing, because you can forgive somebody ignorant. Like, that's half my family. I have to do that every Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
So you can forgive ignorance because Uncle Fred really is just a product of his environment, and he had this kind of blinders provincial thinking on, and
Yeah.
you can forgive that, I think. As long as once they are educated, because you were saying like you found the word I was just talking about, the derogatory word for Asians. I was excited to hear what you had said. You found the origin for that word, because I did the research when I found that joke, and I'm curious to see if it's similar. So
it was, yeah, that's what I was going to say, was like, you don't realize that you can't, you don't realize that you can give your Uncle Frank or whatever a little bit of grace, because when you personally experience that thing, when you go like, oh, I was using that. Oh, whoops. But actually, I heard a story about that, which was during the Vietnam War, when soldiers were entering villages. I don't remember what it actually stands for, but they were saying me.
Yes, and that was I
try to do call and response for racism.
Yeah,
me, go ahead. Me and go ahead.
Let us know what kind of person you are. But that's exactly what I heard. And obviously, and as a language teacher, because I teach languages, to me, that's an honest thing. Like, like, that's how babies, learn words. They point, they say syllables, they think they heard that syllable, and they keep producing it and repeating it. So, that makes sense. So, like, to me, like, but that's how all things happen, whatever. So for me, it's like the intention, whatever. But, when we talk about challenges or stuff, with like autism and stuff like that, like, it's funny because I was pointed this out to somebody the other day. I do a bit about how I coach a special needs baseball league, and the name of it is Challenger Division.
Really?
Like, that's literally the official name from Little League Baseball, the Challenger Division.
This is an interesting. Speaking of divisions in children's league sports, is midget still cool? Do they still say that for midget?
Well, I know I'm near a town called Boyertown, and that's what they call the real little kids, because I used to umpire, and that's what it was. It was just known as the Midget Baseball League.
I digress. I apologize, but I was like that. Like, it seems like a lot of stuff is flying. That, how people say that there's only a couple races, there's like a few races that are still left that you can totally make fun of for some reason, but they're like, you know what I mean? Like,
yes,
I've heard many good bits, and all are really good points of why you could still make fun of this, and they were different races. And I was like, man, you can still do that.
I listened to this podcast called The Good One, and it follows. Have you heard of this? Do you know?
But that's a pretty funny name.
It is. Well, it's Vulture Magazine's the guy, the editor from Vulture Magazine, and he basically interviews every 2 weeks like a famous comedian in a particular bit. They play the bit at the top of the show, in the next hour and a half they're dissecting the origin, how it came. And so he just had Tom Segura on like maybe 2 weeks ago, and he did his racial fight, which apparently was a scene that had happened to him when he was at Rittenhouse Square in Philadelphia. And so it became this big bit, but his point of the whole bit is to talk about racism. And the whole thing is how he was walking through a park, and this homeless white guy started yelling the N-word at a black guy there, and how all of a sudden, like, other black guys started coming out of the woodwork to, like, and he was just talking about how there's this like brotherhood, but with white people, he's like, I don't know that white guy. Like there is no, and the whole bit is like, if you want slurs, then white people slurs are all over. And he does a whole bit of all the white slurs and how he thinks they're funny. Because his point being, like, that's probably the safest slurs you want. Have at it. To say all the white slurs you want. We have no allegiance with each other.
Fuck that guy. I don't know that guy.
Yeah, exactly. So
for the most part, I would say that it's not even that, like, so, that was the other thing that I was getting to, was also learning the other white privilege that I had was in my opinion, racism is silly. It's so silly. So, like, but in the sense that it's rooted in a non-truth. Like, it literally, no race is superior to any race. Like, we all have fuck ups. Every single like there's white trash, there's black trash, there's every color trash, like the whole rainbow. We all have the ones that make like the ones that were like, I don't know that one kind of thing. Like you said, like not like now I'm putting it back on you again.
Like,
you know how you were saying that, you know. But like I have that same like mentality of like having that opinion of like, oh yeah, I can just go like, oh, it's because it's in situations like that, we're like, huh, silly misunderstanding, and boy, I got real mixed up in a lot of hate, huh? That the story of back to the word for that, you know,
the Asian slur we were referring to earlier. Yes.
And the connection of we always had Vietnamese neighbors on that same street. Right next door to us, we had Vietnamese, and my mom. And this is that subtle thing where you're like, oh wait, am I doing that shit too? Where my mom would call them the Vietnamese.
Yes, yeah.
I was like, wait, what are you saying? You know, the Vietnamese next door. She joke about not letting the cats out and stuff like that, and stuff like that, where you're like, wait a minute, I don't know if this is like, are you racist?
Right? It's like, do you hear Shane Gillis's bit on that in his special where he's like, people are like, yeah, racism's not like, it's not something you are or you aren't. Like, it's not, you turn on, it's like, you know, it happens like hunger. His comparison is hunger. Like, yeah, maybe you aren't right now, but if a cheeseburger cuts you off on the highway, you know, and it's, but like, so I think for me, when I think about my own origin story, I moved a lot. Like I went to like 7 different schools, K to 12, like, and I was not an Army brat. I was more of a Salvation Army brat. Like we were just poor. It's like if they raised the rent, we were moving.
Yeah.
The neighborhood I most identify with, where I probably spent most of my like years that I actually have memories of, was in the hill section of Scranton. And believe it or not, on the side of a hill, but it was nice. Split between 2 distinct sides where the part on Monroe Avenue where I lived, and the one side was all Orthodox Jewish people. You know, those the curls they call payots, the yarmulkes, the whole deal.
I found out the other day they use the same hair product I do.
Really?
Curl, yeah, I like a tight curl in the back.
Yeah.
So yeah, they use the same. So that's why I'm like, damn. I eat the same hot dogs as Jewish people and the same hair products. I eat the same hair products.
So well, see that. So like this neighborhood was that whole half this side, and then the other half was an all black neighborhood, and then there was me and my lesbian moms in the middle. Like so, like that's like. That is a musical. That's why people are like, oh, is it like the, Jets and the Sharks? I'm like, no, it was more like the Tenants and the Landlords. But just because of growing it, and like, so here I am trying to hide my identity of my family in 80s Scranton, like I'm living with the Golden Girls, and then you have Orthodox Jewish who have strict traditions, and they don't care what you think. Like nobody's out on the streets after Friday dusk, and like, but then over here you're having, so it's like a bunch of different headgear, do-rags, yarmulkes, whatever, lots of weird music. And for me, it was just so eclectic. So I've only grown up in these different neighborhoods. So for me, that it was a vision, like I have a different lens of the world because I didn't grow up in like just a typical neighborhood with typical parents. So for me, like my compass is calibrated a little differently. So
yeah.
I always go on people's intention because I was always around people who didn't know my family and didn't know that about them. But, gay jokes in the 90s, that was like the thing to do. Yeah. You know what I mean? You're so gay. So I'm like sitting here talking about, hey, you talking about my mom? What's going on here? Like I have a joke now where I'm like, I was very confused. It was like, there were your mom jokes, there were gay jokes. When those two worlds collided, I was very confused, like you're gay, your mom's gay, mine too.
Yeah. Yeah, no way. Mine too.
So it's just like one of those things for me that like, and now, I'm married, I have 2 kids. And so now I have a seemingly typical nuclear family. I have like 1 cat instead of a dog or whatever. I have a goldfish too. Yeah. But like just typical, I'll have a house, like we were both teachers, like, and I don't know how to live this life. I'm like trying to remember like, okay, Danny Tanner, Cliff Huxtable.
Yeah. Like, you don't feel it's like imposter syndrome. Like you feel
like I have no idea. It's like I have no idea. I have no reality other than like some of my friends, but I grew up in the 80s in Scranton. So those weren't healthy marriages I was seeing. So it's like you have to live in fantasy. I have to like take pieces and kind of make my own. And that's what I think for my wife and I, because she grew up in a seemingly typical family that was very religious, yet even then, like we both felt like we didn't fit in our family. So now we're making this family together.
Yeah.
And so
Dude,
a lot of my stand-ups have.
We are very, very similar. Like I know you were asking earlier. I think we're about close on age. We are close on a lot of these things, dude. Gay parents. I'm 1 for 2 on that.
What?
Yeah, dude. My dad was gay as shit.
My dad's gay too. Isn't that
no
crazy?
way? You got a gay? Oh yeah, your dad got. Oh, sorry. Hold on. Your dad came out. I was gonna say went gay.
Yeah, went gay.
Yeah, went gay, and then moved to Spain, right?
Yes, he's married to a man in Spain for like they've been there the last 20 years. We actually spent the summer.
They have a beautiful house and beautiful.
Oh my God, it's yeah.
Please give my best to your father. I like that.
Yeah.
That and if he's looking for somebody, I'd love to move to Spain. You know, if he wants a young, I think I'm like kind of like an otter. You know what I mean? I'm not like fully hairless, but I'm like all right. But it's that a lot of that same stuff. Like the neighborhood that we grew up in wasn't like a bad neighborhood. I always referred to us growing up was white trash adjacent. Like I always felt better than everywhere I was, kind of thing. I'm just, but not in like my nose is stuck up, but just kind of like I wanted more.
Yeah, exactly.
And it wasn't in like a bad, and again, not in like I didn't live in a slum. You know what I mean? Like it was a perfectly fine neighborhood.
Yeah.
Literally just across the street from a warehouse. And it wasn't like they were like blowing sawdust into our yard or anything. It wasn't like super industrial. All the industrial stuff was on the other side of that. But it was just we had the ass end of a fucking warehouse. Yeah. Pardon my French, but like you looking right at us. So it's this kind of thing of like where you're like, okay, I'm not having like you just have to salve it. It's not like you had this perfect example of here's how you balance a checkbook and here's how you do this and here's how you should do this and here's how the family structure should be and here's how that you're kind of like, all right, well, I liked this and this. This wasn't this part. I want to be open and honest. I want to be a good partner. I want to make sure that I'm a good, certain things that you see that like weren't like traumas, but they weren't necessarily stuff that you're like, oh, I want to totally mimic that. But
yeah, I feel it.
Things,
I agree. I feel like the way I've been, a lot of my comedy's been exploring that for me because I was so hidden on what I could say, or not that we had like a team meeting and said, hey, you can't say this, but it was just an understanding that that was my mom's friend, or as I got older, she became my aunt, and like some of those pieces that I was just like, my biological mom was that same way, where it was like, I feel like she was living her life like she was trying to trace a Norman Rockwell painting. Like in her mind, it had to be a Rockwell. And I'm like, listen, we're a Pollock. Guess what? That bull's paintings are worth a heck of a lot, because the reality is life's messy and that there's beauty in that. And so I think that's the problem. She lived in an era where you had to live the Rockwell life. And if, this Pollock wasn't something that anybody in 80 Scranton knew about, yet the rest of the world celebrating that. So it's sort of, that's where I'm trying to do with my comedy now is bring that to the forefront. Cause as I talk about things like having a daughter with autism, having, gay mom who was honest from the beginning, like my parents tried to do Playhouse, like my biological parents, they tried to play house. I have a joke where I'm like, I was a lone souvenir on the night they played hetero. They met in college, they did that. And then my mom was like, no, I get this is not what I want. My dad tried to remarry and do that deal.
Dude, I was a let's make it work, baby.
There you go.
I was the third kid of like I think they had split up and there was like, well, maybe I cut my hair short. Maybe I'll, and it's like, yeah.
Yeah, enough's enough. And hey, I can't imagine what that must have been like for them. So I was grateful that my mom found her truth early and she did that. And then, I had a joke where I was like, my dad did the full deny defense, the Mike Pence coverage, like he did the whole second life. And that was it. He remarried for a little while there, so he took a while. And my other one is that he met a guy on AOL 2.0, like, so when the internet came out, so did he. Like, that was that whole
Yeah.
piece for him. So, and it was much later. I was probably about 4, and he didn't tell me. His friends told me.
Wow.
And so it was something that he had hidden because he was ashamed. He had spent his whole life trying to hide it from everybody, regardless, forget his son. And now he's found his truth. He's found his life. He's happy. And we have a relationship finally. So, like,
Yeah.
and
That's
the cool
amazing. Yeah.
thing I hated about growing up like that is there was no word for my other mother. Colleen was her name. She's no longer with us, but like, so at that time there was no other name, and I'm giving her all these fake names, friend, aunt, like.
Yeah.
So, like, for now, for my dad, and he's married to a guy, Luis, who's a great grandfather to my kids as well. So, like, it's very important that they both have a name. So Pop Up and
Yeah.
Poppy, so, like, they have a name for them, and they only know them as their grandparents. And so, like, that for me was really important, is setting that course right now. Like, I hated that I didn't have a name, or I couldn't celebrate the fact that I had this other mother. I had to pretend like she was, something else. And that just didn't do justice to the relationship. So
Yeah.
it's like, I hate that when we live in a life where we have expectations of what things are, and we can't talk honest and openly about this stuff like that to me is like, we got to be done with that in 2022. We got to be moving on. And after the couple years we all just went through, like,
Yeah.
there's no more
Got to be
time for.
honest. You have to. You can't. You like if anything, the again, like you said, like that. It's how fleeting life is, and how fleeting mental illness is. We're all hanging on by like a string at most times when you're in. I'm in a great relationship, and I don't. You know what I mean? Like, there's still times where I'm like, just real twitchy, and like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know if anything's that. So, like, if you have feelings like, so I also, through my comedy, much like, I'm telling you, like, it is, I know it's, everybody kind of has the joke or the saying where they're like, it's like therapy or whatever. It's really just self-reflection. And I think that's
Yes.
what a lot of thing is. It's comedy is philosophy, and philosophy is it's not a science. It is just self-reflection. It is
Mhm.
just taking your invasive thoughts or your thoughts and just like running with it.
Yeah.
What if? Yes, what if? That's because, you know what? That's another thing that this year's taught us, or these past couple of years have taught us. Anything's possible. Anything can happen. And when you go, that's never going to happen, it's probably going to happen now. Like, now, that's
Yeah.
the new normal we're all talking about. When you
Yeah.
go, it's probably not going to be late. It'll probably be on time for his birthday. It's going to be 4 months late.
Yep.
You did that.
You put
So
that energy out there. It's like that. Did you ever read that, The Secret? And I was like a
yeah,
big poker, like that concept of the law of attraction. Like, the universe doesn't know those little nuances. Like, don't. It
yeah.
just hears. It just hears you putting that out in the universe, and that's going to boomerang back to you one way or another.
There's still so many comics, because I talk about this even with like jujitsu and stuff like that. A lot of people that do jujitsu say, "Oh, it's like my therapy or something like that. It's my whatever." It's a meditation for me. That's what it is beneficial, but neither one of these things are so there's some comics that really should probably get therapy, like real
Yes.
actual therapy. So if you're saying it's therapy, it's not therapy.
No.
It is a wonderful self-reflection, and it is very insightful, and it's going to help you know what to talk about in therapy.
Yeah, right. Well, and it's liberating. Like,
Yeah.
and the other part of it is the reason that to get on stage and share it when it's people like, oh, well, this is private. Well, yeah, but it's private, but like, other people might be feeling that same way. And so this is a way to showcase a little normalcy to what would have been considered the margins, or I would have never thought. There's only one other person in my life that I'm very grateful that I met him. Still one of my best friends to this day. I'm actually going to be one of his groomsmen in his wedding. He when I met him in 8th grade, when he transferred to our school, and it turns out his mom was gay. And it was funny how we didn't realize, like, we neither of us talked about it, but then we somehow both started sensing it, and it was this cool. So I'd never met anybody else. So I thought I was the only person in the world who was going through all of this. And now, you start, once you bring things out, you start realizing, oh, well, if I keep it a secret, then then nobody ever talks about it. Then how do you expect it to ever evolve and change unless there's, unless people are talking about it. So I think if you can find a way to build tension and break it, because that's the part when you go to an open mic and somebody needs therapy, they build that tension real good. They just haven't found what releases it, or they haven't thought about, well, what's relatable. Even if somebody hasn't experienced this, there's got to be some relatable piece there. And so when you're playing, checkers and not chess with that, then that's when you're like, oh, okay, they have this energy, they just don't know how to release that valve. In the same way my daughter doesn't know what to do with that energy, so she stims and goes on the toes and does all this because she's trying to find a way to get it out. And that's what comedy is. Comedy is like building that tension, but you got to be able to break it.
Yeah, I think that's so my I use it a lot of times like my dad also committed suicide as well. And I think a lot of his depression and early suicide attempts were, I think, from like not necessarily just a mental illness, but maybe a mental illness built through trauma of not being able to be himself.
Well,
if he's just trying to force who he was not the whole time, it really led to it. And this is when it's funny, like, this is what he's writing jokes about. What do you like? No, it's funny. It's hilarious. Trust me.
Trust me. It's so funny.
But it's like, it's one of those things that like, it's almost, I've gotten to the point where early on I was a little nervous about talking about it, because I was nervous about self-reflecting, because I was kind of nervous about what I would trigger and what I would find, really. But now I tell the joke with a lot more confidence, in the sense of like, how dare you get offended by my dad? Like, just because you're uncomfortable by this, I lived it.
Well, here's why this is important.
I haven't found a ton. There's some people. There's another comic locally around here. I think Ron Kane's dad died. I don't know if it was when he was younger. I probably should pay more attention. I'm gonna have Ron on the show one day. I promise we're gonna talk about this. But I don't know if he had any gay parents. So he's not in our club. But
yet.
But it's a thing where like like you said, building that normalcy of saying, like, because my aunt is like that. My aunt is also like, I mean, I'm not here to out anybody.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I won't, because I don't think officially, I don't know if officially she has to anybody, because who knows? So in that case, maybe I'm wrong, but she literally plays softball, golf. She's always had her friend. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Her really good friends that like hang out all the time. Same thing with my dad growing up. When we would stay at his house on the weekends, his friend Michael would be there, or his friend, you know what I mean? Like, and it's like, but like they're sleeping in the same bed, and I didn't think anything of it. Like, it's the same thing as like if I would climb into the bed with mom and whatever, you know what I mean? Like, I would just be like, hey, what's going on, guys? Good morning. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't weird. Like, so why? Like, I guess
that's the point. That's the point. It's not weird,
right? Because it's also like, a friend. Like, but it's also like I don't even know what my brain thought, but it wasn't till later on that like my mom was like, okay. And like, finding more about it,
Well, here's what to your original point. Why it's so important that you continue to tell that story and to do that is, like, for example, my dad wasn't a part of my life for a while, because when my mom broke the news, that's the first thing my dad tried to do. He tried to commit suicide. He was unsuccessful, and it messed him up for a while. And I think, but thankfully he didn't. Now, my other friend that I told you earlier, the reason he moved to me in 8th grade, because his mom was successful. So now here you're talking now, the two people besides myself that I know in my life, we all have this one thing in common, and now we all have this other thing in common, where 2 out of 3 succeeded in that, but all 3 of them tried it. And so that to me says, oh, okay, then it's more than ever important to do that, because there are others out there who have either experienced that and need that release of tension. Now, it could be triggered, but if you do it right in a way that then it's really liberating, because it's like, oh, I'm not the only one. We all deal with anybody that's thought of it, regardless of the reasons why. I have a close friend that I have two close friends that I was groomsman in the one's wedding and stuff like that. And he was a war vet, really good, went off to Afghanistan when 9/11 happened, which today is the same day. So it's kind of weird. He
Sorry.
went off and joined the
That's,
joined the
that's the
military.
symbol for 9/11, right? This
No,
sorry, no.
I didn't know that.
That's the towers, yeah.
Oh, that makes sense. So he went off and did the thing, and he didn't have any wounds, but his twin brother lost his leg to a roadside bomb. Now his brother lost the leg. He went on. He does speaking events all over the country. He was the guy on the cover of Time magazine that was carrying a woman across the line at like the Boston Marathon, holding a flag. Like he's made such a life. But his other brother had no outward wounds, but he had inside wounds, and he, about 7 years ago took his own life. And so it's a real thing that people experience for all sorts of reasons. And I think anytime we can find a way to put that together and talk about it in a way that's real. Like I love the comedians who can get away with, like Rosebud Baker does a thing about her sister, Pat. Like, there's a place for that because it is a real thing. And so I think that that's very good. It's very interesting. I'm
real
excited.
Life. It's real life, like you said. Like this is now 3 full lives completely affected by almost the exact same, and not like 3 people affected by, and I say that like because it's every life that touched that the 3 lives that were that, you know what I mean, like 2 successful, 1 not, you know what I mean, like
when you're only left to your own inner
you're a statistic.
monologue.
You're literally a statistic at that point, because that's the thing is like when you hear statistics, you don't hear, like you hear 1 out of 10 dentists disagrees, you know what I mean, or whatever it is. Like, but if you were literally there standing in front of 10 dentists and you saw it, you'd be like, holy shit, like it's true. Like literally, if there's 10 dentists, there's going to be 1 guy that's going to go, no, like it's just a reality. But this is a statistic that's more like, this is the depressing one where you're like, if you were because that's the thing is it's not necessarily, it's not a thing that I love to shout from the rooftops, but it is a thing that I am an advocate for assisted suicide, but like in situations where it's like, maybe there is literally times where you just need to talk to somebody and you need to normalize some things. Yeah. Because that's the thing is, I also know that people are adults and that sometimes they go like, I don't want to be here, but like, is it because you don't feel comfortable here? And maybe you can feel comfortable if you just share who you are.
Yeah. Well, that's it. If you're on that inner monologue and you're the only person talking to yourself. Yeah.
Your perception is not reality.
Yeah, exactly right.
Perception is not reality.
Yeah.
So if sharing these stories and sharing these feelings and sharing that stuff, normalizing so much stuff, it can make things where that are like it where you don't have to go deal with these inner wounds, because that's the thing is, if you had a huge gash on your arm, I don't know who would like have like their guts spilling out and go like, I can handle it. You know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? Like so like that's like metaphorically, if you're like going like, I didn't used to think like this, but now I think like this. That's like metaphorically your mental guts kind of spilling out. Maybe you need to go spill your guts to somebody. Like that's
no, you're right. I mean, and what you said earlier, I read a book someone recommended once called The Power of Now by a guy named Eckhart Tolle. And I didn't finish the whole book, but as I was reading some of it, one of the things he talked about is your mind is a tool. So like you can only trust it for when it's the job you're using it for. So I'm not gonna, use a hammer to like do something that, I'm not gonna use a hammer to mow my lawn, so it's like, that's not the right tool for that job. So like at some point you gotta, your mind, and that's a huge point. Anybody like, I was grateful that my mom pushed me into therapy when I was younger, just like for no major reason other than, hey, you're processing a lot of information about so for her, she had always pushed me into that, and I was very grateful, because to this day I still do it. And right before the pandemic, I sought it out, because if I had all of these feelings and I would come home and now I have to dump that on, like my mom lives with us now for the last 8 or 9 years. She lived with us since we had our first, and my wife's here. It's not fair for me to bring that and dump that on them. We have a bunch of other things going on. So just having that other outlet or having that other space for twice a month or whatever,
Yeah.
to go talk for an hour is huge. It's because it's not fair to dump that on other people who have baggage too.
And I think this is a huge thing is I think there is a weird, like, everything has kind of become this weird gray area on almost most social issues, in my opinion, like in my eyes, at least, because it can't always be. I honestly feel like a 2-parent home is so important, but it doesn't matter. You just need 2 opinions. You need 2 sensibilities and 2 people helping out, because I wish I had gone into a lot more therapy, but I've learned to not. I don't blame my mom. Like, I'm not sitting there going like, why didn't she push me into therapy? Why didn't she help me? Because she said literally, like, she had to do an assessment and go, like, how you guys doing? All right, you're still eating. Like, she is basically like cats.
Yeah.
Like, you kind of look at, like, they're still eating, they're still drinking, they're still pooping and peeing. Okay, like, I got, because she was on her own. She was like, you know what I mean? Like, she's now the weekends that I had to where he would go, they would go to their dad's house or something like that. Now that's mine. And also I have to cope with losing the love of my life, as well as my son's father. What, you know what I mean? What am I going to do next? All this other stuff. You know what I mean? Like, it's, is it the game?
Yeah. My daughter's here talking to me. Hold on one second.
Okay.
She's funny. She's like, can I go outside now? I'm like, no, not yet, baby. It's raining. It's pouring rain here. I don't know about you, but like we're supposed to have soccer. We had like 9 million things canceled today because of the rain. But I like, to your point, like, I think your mom was just trying to say, like, listen, as a teacher, we talk about the kids who come in, they might come into the school. Are their needs being met? There's a guy, Maslow, who talked about a hierarchy of needs. And so, like, shelter, food, like all of these basic needs, sometimes kids are coming to us, and as a teacher in school, they're coming without some of these needs. So that's why we have a breakfast program. That's why we have counselors in the building. Like, we have that. And one of the schools the district that I live in, the school that I live in that my kids go to, has a high population of a lot of that. So so it's interesting seeing that as a teacher now, where I'm like, oh wow, like some of these kids are coming in. So your mom's like, well,
it's a lot.
Hey, she was making sure your basic needs were being met. And that was the most important, because there are some who aren't even doing that. Because again, you're saying she's a person who's going through stuff on her own, but she's also responsible for 3 other, three? Is it, you have 2 siblings?
So it's me and my 2 older brothers. I'm the baby. And we were actually we were on vacation so that was another thing. That was, again, silver lining in the sense, when it happened, she was actually at her sister's house we were up in upstate New York, in Messina, New York. And so it's kind of like, so she has like some support system. Obviously, it's not like, it wasn't like as far as making the calls, but for her, it was more like you said, we had all those things. We were fed, we had food, water, shelter, like we had all that stuff. It was more what I think what I needed was that toolkit of being able to process emotions, not just these emotions. Do you know what I mean? Like, not just what's happening right now, even to say like, okay, how are you doing about it? Do you have any questions? Like, and like when you're a kid, you're like, I don't know, like, well, legitimately, I joke about this a little bit, but like when because my dad committed suicide, like the movie that was coming out at that time was The Crow, Brendan Lee. And there's a scene where he's jumping off a building. And for me, I was like, oh, he did that. Is that it? Like, you know what I mean? Like, and it's, I think I was second going into 3rd grade. I think I was going into 3rd grade. I think 8 to 9. I was 8 years, because I have a summer birthday, I think.
Yeah, that makes sense, because my daughter's going to be 9 next month, and she's in 3rd grade.
So I think that's what it was. So it's the same idea of like, okay, well, what does that mean? You know what I mean? Like, how, like, it's kind of like, it's not the questions you have. I don't know. You kind of judge yourself a little bit, because you're a kid. You're like, oh, is this a stupid question or anything like this? It seems pretty serious.
But dude, you kids have to don't, like, I remember like having a silly question. Like, I didn't know when a kid was born if they're automatically 1. Like, that was a real concern in my life. You know what I mean? Like
0, or is it like
how does this work? I didn't get the days and months part yet. But like, to your point, like as a kid, you have these things. That makes sense.
Yeah. So that's like, it's the same idea of like, it wasn't a situation where we were in an abusive, it wasn't like a bad or traumatic household or anything like that, but we definitely were experiencing these traumas and things, and it was kind of just scarring over and like just kind of just staying there. And it's not like we just all, I think really what it kind of manifested into is just impulse control problems and, eating my feelings. And then
Yeah.
so like I kind of got lucky. Some depression, sure, but like I don't mind it. I like eating.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, what about, can I ask you about like this? Because I was an only child. So like I didn't have anybody to go. Like, what was the dynamic like with you and
Yeah.
your two older brothers?
So though I have no I don't even know. I might even do an episode once where I actually try to find out what happened, what those years were like for them, because I don't know. It was, dude,
What
it
was
was.
the age? What was the age gap between you guys?
So my brothers, hold on a second. I think they were born in 80 and 81. I think they're close, and I'm 86. That's why, I was
Oh, okay.
I was at the kind of the tail
So
end.
there was a, yeah, like you said, there, and I figured there was a gap. So they're a little bit old. They're in their
Yeah.
young 40s, like I am. Like I'm.
They're
That makes
they're
sense.
more balding and they have diabetes. So
Yes.
they're older.
Yeah, but that makes sense because I mean, hey, even if you're 5 and your brothers are 10, that's a big gap. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
13, 18, like that's a big gap. There's
And
big differences in those.
they were like the biggest thing, and like the biggest connection I feel like we had with us was music. Like that's the thing we could all bond with. Like it wasn't a big sports team, like a sports family. I had to discover a lot of the sports. You're right.
Oh, you're
I had,
good.
okay. I had to discover a lot of sports and things on my own. And like, we didn't have a lot of activity. That was my problem, was again, it was all just survival. It was all just, we were all on our own. And again, not saying that mom didn't say, I love you or stuff like, but it was like, if like looking back now, looking at relationships in like my wife's families
Yeah.
or other people's families, where it's like, they have these emotional connections in that sense where it's like, it's a lot more, there's a lot more substance. It wasn't like, it didn't feel as obligatory. It wasn't like a I love you hug,
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah.
I love you breakfast, goodbye,
And
I
you
love
don't
you
know how to
breakfast,
process it.
goodbye, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
because
it.
she's in that mode, she's in survival, and and I get it. Like, that's what I'm saying. I
Yeah.
want to I would like to do an episode. Let's talk about the years after dad suicide episodes.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think for sure they did a lot of experimental drugs at a really young age, which again I'm an advocate for. But I think closer to now, when you're ready for the self-reflection, you're done kind of developing, maybe then start doing. That's when I did mushrooms after I turned 30. So like,
I have a story about that. I'll tell you in a little bit. Hold on. Let me, my
yeah,
daughter
what's
needs me
that?
for a
Yeah,
second. Give me a second.
yeah. But yeah, Jay's taking care of business here. He was lucky enough, or I was lucky enough to get him for the day doing the podcast, but he definitely has a whole thing going on. And I apparently rain throwing a wrench in it. It is raining here as well. I probably should have asked where he actually was located, but
I'm back.
hey.
Yeah, no, yeah, it's been, I'm in South, I'm like in Phoenixville, where.
Oh, okay, yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah. You do a Thursday, Mike.
So yeah, I just was. So I have one on Wednesdays now in Spring City, which is right near me. So I
Okay.
technically live in Spring City, and then Monday just started. So we have a Phoenixville one that I had been hosting that just starting again tomorrow. And so like now Monday through Thursday, there's mics within 5 minutes of my house. Like I'm pretty excited.
I'm gonna try to hit up some of those this week, because
Yeah.
I've tried Philly last Wednesday or last
The
Wednesday.
Thursday one, if you have the Thursday one, I'm doing an Exton is right off of Route 100. That's been a new one, and the room's been really supportive. It's like a hotel. So like sometimes we even have the guests
Those are
popping
fun.
in.
Yeah, those are fun. There was one I did out in Reading, a hotel. There was like some hotel that there used to be a mic. Shout out to Powder. Powder
Yeah.
used to host that one.
And the guy runs shows there in their main room. So he has some people that are in the area that know he runs shows that have been coming by and be an audience. So it's always, because that's key to Mike. We want audience. So it's like
people, not comics.
Yes, exactly. We want some people that aren't dead inside. So we want somebody that, but like my Wednesday one and my Thursday, we always have a good cluster of some. So it's not like just comics. So it's been great. And but yeah, that's important too. Because if we're going to tell these jokes and broach these subjects, we want them to be around people who aren't also
Yeah.
We want to know, have we gone too far? Is it like, did we build and break the tension?
Yeah, because there's comics aren't a great barometer for comedy sometimes, because a lot of time, like,
Yes.
I know that my sense of humor doesn't match a lot of people's sense of humor. I know that, like, I can get people on my side sometimes, but I gotta win them over. I don't look good on paper.
Yeah. Well, I've been going in. I ignored it for a while, the teacher stuff, and now I'm like
Yeah,
really leaning. I'm really leaning into it now because it's fun and it's like and I try. I'm like I would say 92% clean of most of my jokes because obviously I still am a teacher by day, so that's important. But I'm also a real person, so like
Yeah.
I think that's a line that I've been walking. But the teacher stuff's I've been really leaning into that because it's fun. And there's all these topics, like you said, we could broach all of these topics. Now there are clubs in school now for, like, it used to be called Gay Straight Alliance, and now it's called like Equity Alliance or something.
Yeah, I remember
But
that.
but like those were clubs that didn't exist from like me. Like would have been amazing. Like I went to Catholic school for a good portion, and so I had this guy, Father Rafferty, who was great because he knew my situation, and he would like pull me aside and say, hey, this might come up in theology class this week, or hey, some of those things might happen. So he was really good at pulling me aside and letting me talk it out. And some of the nuns who were the same way, like they were younger nuns and they were really good with that. So like for me, that was the best I had. But to have other peers, that would have been like that was my hardest part, was hiding that from all of them. For the longest time, I was doing a joke recently where I was saying something to, like, I don't know what I was worried about when they all found out all the guys wanted to sleep over at my house. I was like, they're bringing their camcorders, they're bringing 6 packs of blank VHS tapes.
Yeah.
How much sex did they think my moms were having? And just like playing with this whole concept, and like again trying to build that up and play with that, because that's fun, because that was stuff that I would have been mortified to talk about when I was like 14, 15, 16, like having girlfriends and stuff like that. It was like you don't want them to, what if their parents aren't behind? You have to kind of learn their politics. And that was something that was always a challenge. Like, how serious was I with a girl? Well, did she know about my parents? Like, that kind of stuff was part of that. So that's like, now it's like so liberating. So for kids now to come into school and have a place, I started going in and actually talking to the group every year about my story and all of that.
Tyler Weigert's comedy. Tyler Weigert comedy. Sorry, is commenting. He says, "Love both of you guys." Hell yeah!
Oh, dude, Tyler's great. I've been going out to Lancaster on Monday, so I get to see him, and he came out on Wednesday. Stuff. So I always enjoy hearing his comedy, because because he's done some great stuff with breaking tension and even in his own journey and story, and so that's been fun to listen to.
But that's the thing, is owning the things where, like, things aren't always wrong, right? Things aren't always good, bad. Things aren't always, you know what I mean? Like, it's not always black and white, because it's a situation where it's how you own your stories, how you own your experiences, and how you live with that stuff. Because, like you're saying, that experience that you had with going to Catholic school with gay parents, you know what I mean? I was somebody with gay dad who killed himself. So that's double hell. You're going to double hell because we were also raised Catholic. Yeah. So there's a situation where if there's a like it, if we weren't already, like, we weren't structured religious, like, wise in growing up or anything like that. I think, actually, ironically enough, my dad was the only one that took us to church once. We went to like a Catholic mass one time, and I was like, I don't know what the fuck this is. And we just, like, I was kind of like, all right, can we go to Publix now? Like, what? I don't know what's going on here.
No, it's fun, but that happens. Like my mom. Yeah. So my mom's younger brother, also gay.
It's almost like they're hedging their bets. That kind of thing of like, well, like, are we still cool? Like,
yeah. Yeah, so like my uncle Frank is the same way. He still goes to church. He was my confirmation sponsor when I got confirmed, which is like, if you're within the Catholic religion, you do like, baptism's the first one, then you do Holy Communion when you're like 8 or 9.
They just put a business name on the back of your robe.
That's right.
They're the sponsor.
That's right.
NASCAR or something.
That's it. They just stand up there and say, yes, I'll make sure he doesn't do whatever stupid stuff or whatever. But he's so religious, and it's funny because he was a closet been gay forever. And so like for the longest time, like, so it's interesting.
Can you bring him up on some kind of charges or something like that? You're like, wait a minute, you're gay and you're my guy? Fuck, dude. What about me, man?
Right. So I always wondered about that. Like, how could you reconcile some of
Right.
those pieces when you're like in a religion that, like, obviously, but I think the piece that as I thought about it more, like he was raised that way. And so I think a lot of that time he was doing it for my grandma because he wanted to do what my mom was the same way. She ended up becoming a nurse because that was something but she's like, well, you know what, if I'm going to disappoint you this way, I'm at least going to make up for it this way.
Yeah.
And so I wonder if that was sort of it was like sort of my my dad's a nurse too.
What's going on? Like, is there okay, look, sometimes stereotypes are
my dad's Gmail, and not to give his whole one away, but it starts bear nurse. That's literally the beginning of his email. So I have another joke that I was doing. I was like, I found out my dad was gay because I wandered into his bedroom and I found a stack of Bear Monthly magazines. like, oh my God, my dad's a hunter. He hunts bear. I didn't even know he owned guns.
Holy shit! What the hell is it?
And like, then I opened that magazine, learned a new definition for bear, learned that he was gay, and I was not.
This is hunting.
He was cocking a different gun. That's all I'm saying.
A different caliber for sure. Yeah. There's a weird thing where, because like it's a thing that, again, like I said, it was normal. Like it was like, that's dad's friend. That's whatever. Like it was. Maybe I knew it was gay or what gay was. It just didn't make any like, so growing up, like you said, like it wasn't even like a weird thing, like a transition kind of thing, like finding out. It actually ended up being, it kind of transitioned like later on when I was like 16. I was 21 and we were hanging out at this gay bar downtown, and we used to go there and play pool. Like we used to hang out at this tattoo shop in downtown St. Pete. And then it was in walking distance of this place called Grand Central Station. It's already shut down, so it's not. I'm not gonna do anything to it. But it was this old club like that. We used to go there, play pool. Like on this side, it was like this fun gay bar that they did karaoke and you get pictures and play pool. And then the other side was the bondage club where they had the rack and they had all this stuff. And honestly, and wrestling on TV, like men's, not like wrestling. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Some good man on man
WWE.
Action.
Let's just say that. So we would hang out and we used to sing karaoke and like hang out and get like hit on by gay guys. It was kind of fun. It was like a fun confidence booster. But they knew we were the straight guys. Like we were cool. They were cool. Like it was this like really fun kind of utopian like party that like no fuckery, no like there was no malice. Like it was a lot of just super fun quality people. Like we met a guy, actually a big bear guy, who ended up being a friend of mine's lawyer when he was going through his divorce. Like he helped him, like all of his legal stuff he helps him with. Like we like formed relationships there. Like it was really cool to be, and I think, and it was never like we're hanging out at a gay bar. Like it wasn't ironic.
People are people.
That was our hangout. Like it wasn't ironic to us. It wasn't like
my mom's their friends were a bunch of gay guys in this neighboring city that literally was one owned the local florist shop, one had a dinner theater, right? The other was a hairstylist. And they were members of this community. Nobody cared because it was just great because we would go over their house and their house was like total birdcage. Like when you went upstairs, it was like being in Nathan Lane and whole big marble statues, like every fancy decor, like the carpet fibers look like Wrigley Stadium's like outfield, and we just so much fun, so much energy, so much laughter. And so those are the memories I have. And I didn't know, like you said earlier about yours, like I didn't know that was different when I didn't know. I didn't know that was because we were being, it was just, it was fun. Everybody was having a good time. Everybody's laughing. It was innocent fun. Those were important people in my life. So for somebody to downgrade that or say that's when I lived it, I'm like, you crazy? Like I see how your family acts. That's crazy. At least I was having this was where I was spending Thanksgiving and it was great. Like we didn't have, Uncle Ned getting too drunk and, yelling the N-word. Like we didn't have that.
that kind of married in, not even married in, that kind of was like the step boy, the boyfriend, the for long time kind of thing of like,
Yeah.
that's a whole nother story. I
Yeah.
got to figure out how to make that funny. because it really, that was a lot of trauma itself. You know what I mean? Like, so
But the thing is, like, there's that trauma exists for even in hetero. Like, if they were
yeah.
like that same trauma would have been there. So that's like what I start with a lot of them is like, oh well, what would have this had been if it was just another woman instead? And then saying like, oh hey guys, it's the same thing. It's just this instead of this, or this
It's
instead
just a
of this.
relationship. Yeah, that's what I was
Yeah.
saying before. Is like it doesn't. I'm not saying it's got to be Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve. I'm saying
Yeah.
it literally you need a blah and a blah. Like you need two
Yeah.
blahs at
Yeah.
least. You need somebody because somebody's got to it. I like the term "it takes a village." I always hated that because I was like, no, raise your kids. What are you doing? But I was like, oh no, it does. It's a lot.
It does. Well, that's why I'm having my mom around. So now there's
Yeah.
three different adults in this house right now with the two kids, and like it's
And they're still
great.
coming in. They're going like, and they're like pulling them away, going, and you're just like, you know what I mean? Like it's like a
It's the
war zone.
same, but
Yeah,
it's so good. The more you have, the more perspective, because now
yeah.
they have a perspective of their grandma and how to they're going to eventually have to take care of her. You know what I mean? Like now she's able to take care of them, get them on
And
the bus.
that's a
But that's a
lesson.
big thing.
Yeah, that's a lesson about appreciate. And that was another thing too. Is like my grandmother came back to live with us when she was on her way out. You know what I mean? Like that. Like
Yeah,
that's something. That's a message too. Like I didn't growing up necessarily have the not that I had a bad relationship with my grandparents. I just didn't have a lot of a relationship with my
yeah,
grandparents. The only ones that were left were my mom's side, and like we went over to their house and stuff. But it was like I don't know. It just kind of always felt like kind of like there again, not a ton of substance until later on when like grandma moved in. And then then I was kind of like I got to see like I don't know, I just got to hang out with my grandma sometimes. And like it was just I got to learn to enjoy her company. It
yeah,
wasn't like go to grandma's house. I think because she moved into my house, it was more comfortable.
yeah.
And I ended up so this okay, this is gonna be a weird transition, but it does technically stay on topic. Do you at all believe in ghosts?
I really want to. I
Okay,
do.
yeah.
I want to, and
Search
like
for it.
yeah, like I watch like whenever something's on Travel Channel, like they have like those nonstop like ghost hunter things. I always watch that. And funny enough, my friend who we were talking earlier, who also had a gay mom, when I would stay at his dad's house because he'd never lived with his dad and he was forced to live with his dad. And he lived in this little. They had an oil company. He lived in what was used to be the old office, and so apparently it was haunted. And I swear to this day, I woke up one night and saw like a woman in
Yeah, yeah.
there and he had said like and there was this whole thing. That was the only time I've ever had anything experience. And again, it was like
Where you
in the
can't
middle of the
explain it.
night. I
Yeah.
can't like I have this vague memory. It stuck with me. I'm 40 now. I probably was 14 or 15 at the time. So like for more than half of my life, I still have this like I think I saw one. Like I think like
I
part
think
of
I
me is
got one.
like I think like so part of me believes that that energy can I can it makes sense to me. Like I'm open to it, I guess is
Yeah,
where
yeah. So that's the thing. My grandmother ended up passing away in our house, and I've told this story I think multiple times on the podcast, but deal with it. I'll give you the little version. I've had a relationship like I never really was too close with my grandmother, and but like when she moved in, we used to just kind of hang out and read the paper together, or just like hang out. Just I would just sit in there with her for not all the time, but just when I was there, like I would spend some time with her.
yeah.
Um, and one night I was watching Skinamax in the living room. This is a couple months after she had passed away, like months and months, like probably almost a half a year or so. We started kind of using that room kind of as storage. We're not ready to clean it out yet
Yeah.
because there's again a
Yeah.
lot of then we're talking touches of maybe we're talking a little bit of hoarding. We're talking about a little mental illness
Yep.
manifesting, kind of thing. So and maybe now in retrospect, now that I'm telling the story again, I'm actually thinking, what if this was her saying like, hey, you need to get help out, like this is starting to get overwhelming for your mom because she lost her mom, you know what I mean, like you learn how traumatic that is.
Yeah.
So I was sitting in the living room, which is just a little bit down the hall. There's a room right here, right behind, like the hallway, and then just next to that one down the hall is where my grandma used to live. That's my old room, and then the hallway continues into the kitchen, and then it kind of snakes like this. So either way, that room, the door is open, but the room to my mom's room is closed. The cats are in there, and I'm just the only one in the house trying to keep the volume down so I could watch some porno and not get caught.
Yeah.
And scan like
Totally. Well, I
TVMA.
had to watch the wavy screens open
Yeah.
that it would clear up for just
You
a
understand?
nanosecond.
Same generation. Yeah. Okay. You get it.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting there, the volume's on like 3 because I want to hear some of it, and then
Yep.
but out of nowhere, and when we moved my grandma in, she had a collection of like wind chimes. She hung them up on the ceiling of her room, and because she used to have them on her porch, she used to like to have the wind chimes blowing and stuff like that. And you never, unless you bumped your head into it, you never heard them. You never did anything. So I'm just sitting there in the living room watching TV, and in that dark room, I just start hearing somebody like batting one of the wind chimes.
Good.
And I
got like goosebumps listening to you tell the story.
Legitimately, I froze. I muted the TV. I actually switched the channel because I'm not in the mind space to be able to do this. You know how you have the last channel saved where you can switch over just in case somebody pops out. Right. So I just switched over to that, and I was like, and I'm listening, and I'm just like, and for probably a solid minute, it was just bam, bam, and it was like, and then it just stops. And even that experience, I'm trying to explain it. Maybe it's the air conditioning this one time was like super powerful and it blew it for like a minute. I don't know. Or the cat got on the roof, on the ceiling somehow, but that's not really possible for them in this case. And so I turned the TV off and I ran past the room to my room in the back and like hid under the covers like most people, and like it was like that kind of scared or nervous that you are.
Yeah.
So you wake up in the morning and you're like, oh my God, I survived. Like you fall asleep terrified.
Yeah.
I told my mom the next morning, and I thought she was going to be like, what are you talking, whatever. But her face was just like, she's like, why didn't you wake me up? She's like, wake me up the next time that happens. She didn't deny it. She didn't question it whatsoever. And I kind of feel like I wish I would have talked to her more about that, because her reaction was like, I'm upset that I missed out. Like with her, there was no doubt. Like I explained to her all of that stuff. I didn't say I heard something, I saw something. All I heard was that I experienced it like the same way like you said. But mine was, I have no explanation for it. Exactly. You know what I mean? I have no explanation for it.
Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, like those kind of things. That's why I'm fascinated by that, because I think there is, like, I used to. Did you ever watch the John Edward dude that used to have a show on, like, afternoons, a median guy, like all of those things, like, and I'm sure there are enough there that taint the waters of.
There's a lot of cold reading. There's a lot of like, you said your dad's name was Michael. It's like, look,
yeah, I mean, especially nowadays, you could be looking up easily with someone in a minute, like some of that information. But like, there's always something to that, and I think like, and because you're preying on someone who wants a moment. Everybody wants another moment with that person. Everybody wants another afternoon chat with, especially if somebody was taken from them and they just weren't quite ready. Like my dad wasn't around for most of my life because he was figuring himself out. So I actually had another guy who had stepped in about my cowboy when I was about 18, stepped in and kind of was a male father figure to me for most of my life. And then he had passed probably, well, it'll be 6 years. It would have been 6 years ago in May. I never had any like major encounter, but like he was such a profound force, and he was taken way too young. He should be around right now.
Yeah.
Like, and he was the person that kind of helped me sort all of this out and helped me figure out how to be a man. And because he had a family and had a wife and had kids, and so he had brought me in as one of he had adopted kids because he had polio when he was young, and so he made his life adopting kids.
I'm not laughing. You said polio, and then I smirked, but I had the exact thought of like, oh yeah, you had a positive male role model. That's how you have, I'm assuming, pretty good credit, a house.
Yes.
Okay,
yes,
cool.
Exactly.
Yeah. I don't know if you know this, Jay, but I watched my male role models growing up were a lot of television and entertainment, a lot of Jean-Claude Van Damme movies growing up. Can you tell?
Yeah, that's right. That's why I used to joke that like
Time pop.
my TV was broke, so I only watched The Simpsons and Married with Children and The Cosby Show. So even my fictional dads were a disappointment.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Yeah, exactly.
You know, but like,
not till
so
the end.
when I was 18, like this guy came into my life and I was grateful for that. But like, so, you know, he passes away right before Father's Day when I'm about to be a dad for the second time. And we had just moved. We had like this bad scenario where we were living next to hoarders and didn't know it, but like they had like trash on all 3 floors and like it was a fire hazard. And I worried with my mom and my pregnant wife who I was going to carry out of the house if there was a fire. So like we had to move without really having a plan, and we lost our savings. And like it was, and then I lost him at that same time, and it was just so devastating. I went into such a dark space, and I had to step up and for my family at that time too, because we brought my daughter home on Father's Day from the hospital.
God.
And so like that was such like a big, I'm like, even right now I'm feeling all of that. And then
legitimately, that is the textbook definition of bittersweet.
Right.
That is like, I've never heard a better example of bittersweet than that exact example.
So like I used to go to his office a lot. I had actually met him because I was at her sinus at the time and I was studying educational psychology, and my ed psych teacher worked in his office. And so she would often invite me over for shadowing and things like that. That's how we met. And so I had in his office, I was also studying Latin. In his office, he had a sign, and it says, vocatus atque non vocatus deus aderet, which was in Carl Jung's office, was a big psychologist dude, like the dude, if you study psychology. And it was a phrase that says, called and not called, God is there. And he was big into God, and I wasn't. I had grown up Catholic, so the typical story. But he was always trying to get me to connect spiritually. And so I took the sign, and it's hanging in my kitchen now in this new house. And I didn't think I'd ever get another house because of that hoarder house. We still have it. Like, we can't get rid of it. So I just thought we'd never be able to save on a teacher salary after losing our savings and getting another house. And by the will of God, we bought this house right before the world shut down. And when I looked on the map after we had signed the papers and everything, it is in a direct line. I could get to his grave site by walking 4 blocks in a direct line from my house. And it's crazy because I was like,
it's hard. I took
that drive to work one day because it was a different route, and I'm like, oh, I recognize that. Oh, there's that cemetery that like I remember carrying the casket over to the spot, and I'm like, oh wow, like this is my drive to work every day can literally be going right by his site every day, and it's like a direct line. I'm like, oh wow, like it was just one of those things that like. He's just always there.
It felt bigger than like,
it felt like things that, and I think that and whether that's real or not, it doesn't matter, because it allows me to have that moment to remember him, to reflect, and to be grateful for where I am. So also, whether that's real or not, doesn't matter. That's real.
But that's a situation right there where you're like, oh, this is a not like a. Like, again, I've always kind of felt, and this is almost the same. This is the same mind, maybe the same lane that my brain is with the racism being like you like it's factually inaccurate. So it's like, how can you take it so seriously? Come on.
Yeah.
But also when you're getting beat up and attacked, I totally understand that. Maybe you take it a lot more seriously than me going like, hey, don't call me a cracker, you jerk.
Yeah.
But it's the same thing where I go like, that same brain is God damn it, I lost my train of thought. God damn it. I started saying that and I was like, wait, make sure that you clarify that. No, but the same thought of like, it's just as silly to believe like I always thought I always identify, I guess, as an agnostic or I kind of changed it now where I'm like, I don't even feel like I necessarily just fit into that. I'm totally comfortable saying I don't know. And I think that's what being agnostic is being
exactly
comfortable in but then I've shifted that now, or I even put it in my bio. I'm more of a peaceful nihilist. You know what I mean?
Facebook official with it.
Yeah. I went Facebook official. It's on my comedy bio that I send out to places to try to get booked. But I have a peaceful nihilism about me where like none of this really matters. None of it really matters. It matters to me a lot, but none of my existence like really, really matters in the scale of the universe or existence or earth or time or any of that. I've also done a lot of mushrooms, but, but you know what I mean? Like, it's kind of this thing of like, so, but also it doesn't mean that it has to be, um, like early on to my, even in my punk days, I felt like a fraud wearing like an anarchy symbol,
Yeah.
because I'm like, until I realized that anarchy could also just be world peace. Anarchy, if you had like total world peace, you wouldn't need any rules. You
Yeah.
wouldn't need to, because it would be the same idea of like everybody just was cool. You wouldn't have to govern necessarily.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But it is just as, it is statistically, in my opinion, just as silly to think there is absolutely no God, as much as people or atheists feel, that people think it's silly that God exists. You know what I mean? If you can't for sure 100% prove God doesn't exist, just like you can't 100% prove that God does exist.
Yeah, exactly.
It's to me, it's that same idea. It's a person to person basis, and that's what I think. That's what spirituality is.
Yeah, and that worldview is like, it's maybe that's what's so hard. Even going back to our beginning stuff about like
Yeah.
being PC and stuff, is like everybody's worldview can be different and is shaped by different things. That like, I took a course when I went to science. There was this class, I'll never forget. It was called CIE, and that stood for the Common Intellectual Experience. And every professor had to teach it, and every freshman had to take it 2 semesters. And you read, it was a survey of literature starting at like the Epic of Gilgamesh through, like, you would read excerpts of the Quran, the Bhagavad Gita, the Bible.
Yeah. Wow.
And then you get into like Marx and Freud and like the founding fathers, all that stuff. And every time you read a piece, the main thing, because it could have been a biology teacher, I had a philosophy teacher one semester, everybody had to teach it. And the guiding questions were always, what does it mean to be human? What is our role in the universe? And what does it mean to be good? And so as you read this literature with kids of all different backgrounds and whatever, for the first time, like away from my little coal mining town of Carbondale, Scranton, Pennsylvania, to like being with a philosophy teacher or a biology teacher, discussing this with people of all faiths, like what an eye-opening experience that was. And how
that sounds like a lot of fun. Actually,
that to me was like, because watching the philosophy teacher loved to poke holes at everybody's stuff, just to kind of get you going, like, hey, like, let's see where this goes. And that to me opened up my eyes to things I never would have thought of. And so it just made me like respectful of the fact that I don't know everything. And for me to come in and say, hey, Jesus loves me, the Bible tells me so, like that's a cute little thing to get kids when they're 6 to subscribe. And you need that for when you're young. But at some point we start learning that it's not always happily ever after. And when do you rip that Band-Aid off, so that's the hard part.
I like that. And I started doing a podcast with a friend of mine a couple years ago. We don't do it, but we did the Buddha Boys podcast with Chris William, fellow pod.
I know. I don't know him, but I've seen him a couple times at Lancaster, I think, as well.
Super considerate, another teacher, super considerate, great, hilarious dude. I think, and really, really patient. He is a special needs teacher as well.
Oh, great.
So he was like, so him being a co-host was awesome because he was able to dumb things down and be able to, like, he was very patient with my ADHD and whatnot. But that podcast kind of, it was how he explained it was, it's comedy and philosophy. We would take questions from people. We would read articles. We would read the whole article. We wouldn't just read a headline. We'd pick, some articles and just talk about stuff, consider stuff. But that's when I kind of learned about my love-hate relationship with philosophy. You know what I mean? Like, I love the freedom and the open-endedness, but if there's one thing that bothers me about philosophy, it is the open-endedness and all of the freedom that is in there. There is so much structure to the chaos in philosophy, like Schrodinger's cat. It makes me angry. I'll be doing laundry. Later on today, I'll be doing laundry after we're done doing this podcast, and I'll be thinking to myself, there is a reality. There is an answer. If you open it and it's dead, it was dead. If you open it and it was alive, it was alive. it doesn't happen. That has nothing to do with opening it.
Yeah,
You know
right.
what I
You're
mean?
right. Yeah.
So there's certain philosophy, but like the Rock of Sisyphus or something like that. I think that's what it is, or the Book of
Yeah, your
Sisyphus.
Sisyphus, or he's rolling the
Yeah,
rock and
stuff
yep.
like that. I'm like, yes, yeah, you know what I mean. So there's a love hate and I love philosophy because it's really just shitting on everyone's point and in hopes to say none of this matters. Like none of this really ultimately means something. It is what you make it.
Well, so it's interesting because like right now I'm teaching at the elementary level and I'm teaching, I do a survey course of all the languages we offer so that when they get to middle school, they have like, they have to make a choice in sixth grade what they're going to take in seventh. So right now I give them, we offer four. So I give them a little buffet every 4 weeks. I switch between Spanish, French, Latin, and German. And we start with Latin because in my opinion, it's like chronologically makes sense. And two of those three other languages wouldn't exist without Latin, just like they wouldn't exist without their parents.
And it would help too, right? Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's a step. It's a stepping
Yeah.
stone.
Yeah.
It's a so one of the first things we started talking about is who the Romans were. Like, let's learn about the people who spoke this language. And one of the first things we talk about is legends, like Romulus and Remus, and mythology, like the gods. And so, you know, when you broach that kind of subject, especially with like 11 and 12-year-olds or anybody, you know, I put it on them. I'm like, hey guys, what's a legend? And they're like, oh, it's mythology. Okay, well, what's mythology? And the ultimate point that we get to is like, well, it doesn't matter if it's real or not.
Right.
It's not the point.
Yeah.
The point is there's something didactic. There's something to be taught. There's something
there that
there's something that we wanted to explain that we couldn't otherwise explain with science or what we know. And that lets them know, hey, there's a missing puzzle piece. Like, that's what algebra is. Algebra comes from the Arabic word for the something, like a system for reconciling disparate parts is like the sans or the Arabic translation of it. And it's like, that's what life is. There's always going to be a missing piece. So you use everything else around you, like Photoshop. If you were going to take somebody an X out of a photo, it's going to assume what that background would have looked like based on the other stuff around it. So like, that's all we're doing with this story is we're saying, hey, Romulus and Remus, these are the guys that founded Rome. They were your typical story of an unwanted child being seemingly put away to death, but survived against all odds and came to realize who they really were. Like that happened to Moses. Like you start to see like that history and cultures have wanted to have like there's a common theme. We're trying to explain what we can't explain otherwise. And it's not that it's real. It's not that a she-wolf actually rescued them and nursed them up. It's the reality is the Romans wanted to tether to something to say, look, we were meant to be. Even if you tried, the gods themselves couldn't deny us because when they tried, this is what happened. We don't know if George Washington chopped down a cherry tree or not. It doesn't matter. We wanted you to know that the first president of this country was a man of integrity and had honor. And that's how we told the story because we didn't have any recording devices. We don't know what was really going on. It's a shortcut.
But just like the game of telephone, over time, you know, things may change, things may happen, but they're all rooted in something true.
Yeah, they're tethered to some piece that's the reason it's standing behind. And oftentimes that's the point. The point is like, you know, okay, so we wanted to say why we thought this was important or what that is. And we don't know why. That's my teacher in college would always say, like, mythology was just, you know, making order out of chaos. Like our brains, like your brain, when you're contemplating Schrodinger's cat, just says, I need to know, I need order here. I need to make sense out of this. And that's what our brains naturally want to do. And so this was a way to kind of quell those fears in terms of what you tell a kid when their fish dies and you're not ready to broach that topic yet, or, you know,
in
Santa
reality,
Claus, elf on the shelf, like whatever, like,
That's actually, that's a way better, I think that's a way better point of, or way better way of putting it, because that in the same way, it has an effective, it has an effectiveness in its execution. Like it's in the reality of this one person in this person's world. That's not even a question. Like elf on a shelf is a real thing. That's all happening. And in your world, you're like, when am I going to alter this person's world? Or this person's existence? Like the way that, and also, and the timing of it really comes in development. I feel like of how mentally fragile are they, and how could, like, to where I go, suicide is when you jump off a building. You know,
Yeah,
like
that's
it's like
right.
no, suicide is a lot of things, son. You know what I mean? Like, but it's the same idea of like but it's still, there are so many moral dilemmas in the world and so many things that can be helped with philosophy,
Yeah.
that like in those because, and I think it's the same again, this is the same brain that is I those signs, those motivational signs that say "hang in there, baby," or like, you know, whatever,
Yeah.
blah blah blah. I saw one of those early on in I think it was elementary school. I think it was fifth grade, not early on in my life, but fifth grade, I think
Yeah.
fourth or fifth. There's a sign in the office that said "ignorance of the law is no excuse," and I had a
Mhm.
cop like pointing. You know what I mean? And I was like, oh no, that was my plan. That was my plan, was like literally going, whoops, I didn't know that was against the law, I apologize,
Yeah.
I won't do it again, I promise. Like, and like them going like, no, the law is the law. So
Yeah.
like, there is law and order, there is that, but there is room in that law and order for philosophy to say, yeah, but, and I like that freedom. But in Schrodinger's cat's case, that, and if it's the same way I feel about Mandela effect. Have you heard of the Mandela effect?
No.
We'll end on this. I'll let you know the Mandela effect, and then I want you to let people know where they can find you and stuff
Yeah.
like that,
Yeah.
and any shows you got coming up. Um, but the Mandela effect is Nelson Mandela. It's an effect where now a large enough group of people in the world, but have this memory of Nelson Mandela dying like early on in the 90s, like or like when you know, when he went to jail and
Yeah.
then was fighting and becoming a president and all that other stuff, you know, all that fun stuff. Like,
Yeah.
that's what they think he died then, and then whatever. Mandela effect is also spread to phenomenons like people thinking that Shaq was in a movie called uh Kazam or Shazam or
It
something,
was Kazam. Yeah.
or it was something. There's different, like if you just Google, hold on, let me just find it real quick because I want to actually get the actual, but it's basically just a large group of people just remembering something. You know what I mean? Like, and it's so frustrating to me because it's like, that is not an effect, that is just poor education or people being wrong.
Or
Like,
like people using statistics to prove their point, even if the statistics really aren't.
so say can sometimes be shared by multiple people. The phenomenon was dubbed the Mandela effect by paranormal researcher Fiona Broom, who reported having vivid and detailed memories of news coverage of South African anti-apartheid leader Nelson Mandela dying in prison in the 1980s. So because a lot, when she said that at a party, somebody was like, yeah, I remember that too. And she's like, fuck, this is everywhere. And then coin the term, and then it's gone to people like going like, oh, I remember things like Chick-fil-A being spelled differently, I remember this being done like differently, and it's like these things where like, no, I'm just wrong. Like, people
Yeah.
don't, it's a weird thing that I'm seeing. It's a very scary thing that I'm seeing form in this, and people of my generation, I'm not saying my generation is excluded from this, our generation is excluded
Yeah.
from this or anything like that. I'm seeing this in this lifetime right now of going forward, people going like, whoa, it's weird, I remember 4 plus 4 being like 5. Like,
Yeah.
nope.
Well, that's like, religion. So one of the things when I took that CIE course, I went to another philosophy club, or so I had a buddy who was into philosophy. So I tagged along to a club one time, and they were talking about religion at its base. And the first meeting they had, they brought up the archaic definition of religion,
Mhm.
which was scrupulous conformity. Which just means like, like giving, believing like without any reservation whatsoever.
Yeah.
And that's really what's happening with that Mandela effect, is basically people just, buying like, yeah, oh yeah, like without taking a moment do
to
your
just go,
research or
nope,
look at.
I was wrong.
I mean, like it's just so that, and that's really what like, but people want to feel part of a group. So I think that there's this natural inclination to not want to be alone. And so if membership requires you to say this, you're like, well, hey, does it really matter to me whether it's true? Like, well, if this is membership. Like when I switched schools one time, there was a Jordan tiers and you had to have a pair of Jordans to be in it. And I would have killed for a pair of Jordans. We just couldn't afford them. But like, you do anything to get in this club. But then like when I got in, or when I was talking to some of those kids, all they were doing was making fun of like some of the other kids and stuff like that. And I'm like, oh, this wasn't what I thought it was, or this.
Yeah, this is
but like I so badly, because I moved so much, that I was trying to get in and be part of other kids that like that you want that. People want that companionship. And so I guess I can sometimes understand why people would say that, even if they don't necessarily believe it, or if that's the only requirement for membership, then I'll tell you whatever you want to hear. If it means I don't have to
I don't know that either.
lunch. Yeah, if I don't want to eat alone at lunch. That's what I know. So that's like, so I can understand sometimes when, especially if kids are young and impressionable, or even just in a bad place and need something. Again, it's like when we were talking at the races, like you can forgive ignorance maybe once, maybe even if it is the law, like you can forgive it once, and that's why that cop might let you off the first time, or they might just give you a reduced sentence with community service. But now the next time, fool me once, we have a saying in Texas, fool me once, can't be fooled again is what I mean to say. But only older people will get that reference. But yeah, so
maybe I'm older. Also, hey, shout out to that president, that's what's today, guys.
That's a big day. I learned these new symbol. I don't know if you know
guys.
This. Yeah,
that's also the Texas Longhorns, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say Bucking Broncos or whatever.
I want to make this a thing. I don't know why. I want to make September 11th like this. It just kind of looks like all the other things they do, with the Twin Towers, or maybe.
Well, here's the thing. I remember in 1976 when we were doing this, and it was a foreshadowing. Don't you remember that too? Kind of started Mandela effect. I don't know.
You remember that? Yeah, I remember that. Yeah,
I was -7, but I totally remember that.
So what Jay, I just want to thank you again for making I know you got there, it sounds like you have a lot going on at the house and everything.
Always.
You're any parent that can make time to do a podcast, I appreciate. But you especially for having this wonderful conversation with me, taking some time to help educate me even a little bit. So
this is great. I mean, I quit, especially finding out I got another compadre in my non-traditional family.
Gay parent club.
Yeah.
So what do you call it? Sorry. I guess it's not gay parent club.
Non-traditional family life. I don't know.
Yeah, that's fun.
It's like, but yeah, like that's, the gay parent club. I just like, it's interesting. Like, and the more you share, you would never know that unless you share. And that made me think like, wow, I hid so much for so long that like it's so great now to have opportunities. It's so liberating to talk about things I would have been deathly afraid to do, and I think that empowers others. As a teacher, I hope that empowers others to do the same, and that's really why I'm a teacher. I don't care so much what I teach. I'll teach the phone book if they let me. Like, dude, I think you were somebody that I wish I would have had as a teacher growing. Like seriously, like because you're passionate about being a genuine person. Yeah, I agree. I appreciate you saying that. I think that's what I said. Like what I would say to people like early on, I was at a conference or something. They would say like, oh, don't introduce yourself as a teacher. Going back to like when your mom used to say the Vietnamese people. Because like language wise, and the are both what we call articles, which are usually what you put in front of a noun. But the difference being like, oh, I need a pen. I don't care what pen. It's like you say, it's an indefinite. I just need something. I need something. When I use the, all of a sudden I'm pointing to something specific. And so like the phrase was like, don't say you're just a teacher. So they had to rephrase it. And so I rephrased it to say, I'm the teacher I wished I had in school. Wow. Yeah. You know what I mean? And so when you said that, I was like, oh, that's funny because that's like, that was my goal, was to be the teacher I wished I had in school. That's the same thing we were talking about just earlier about like when you were growing up, what were some things that you kind of like, you just fill in the gaps. So you say like, there's some things that I can take from them that I can help that I've learned from my teachers, but also some things that I wish they would have done this a little bit more. And like,
this is the teacher that I wish I would have had. Like
you can a la carte it. Yeah, you can a la carte it. You don't have to have a hero that you have to do everything that, because I think a lot of people learn that, because now with the cancellation of different people, Cosby, whoever, like there's this movement now, like, well, do I have to throw the baby out with the bathwater? Like, do I have to like, and I was listening to Bert Kreischer's podcast, and his oldest daughter, Georgia,
yeah.
She was on, and Whitney Cummings was his co-host, and she was talking to Georgia for a while, and they were talking about drugs, and Whitney was trying to get an idea of like what kids are like these days. And Georgia's like, well, we're kind of just like, when we see things, we're just kind of pulling and picking from the things that we want. Like, they're basically a la carting things. They're not looking up to just one thing. They're realizing that everybody's got a closet with skeletons in it. And so why can't we just pick and choose the good pieces of people and try to be that best version? And that's what that's what I'm trying to do with my life, and that's what I hope my daughters, because I know I mess up. I'm not the best. Sometimes I'll get very frustrated with my daughter, and she can't help it, and I know she can't help it, but I'm in a place where I'm in a place in my own head too, and I'm like yelling at my daughter, and I'm like, this poor girl doesn't deserve this right now. But at the end of the day, people are going to act like that around her, and so it's a good piece for her. Not that I should do it intentionally, but those are the natural things that we experience. So if we can,
wife comes in, she needs to know.
Yeah, she needs to. But like sometimes
this is what the life is. This is what the real world is.
And that's the reality is, like, she's gonna pick and choose those moments, because my job is to create as many pleasant moments. And like yesterday, I recorded. We were at Knoebels, and she was like, we had been there before, and she was fine, but it was really busy, a lot of people, and she. Like, one of the things with autism, like the toes we were talking, like they don't know where their body is in space and time when she's in water.
It's hard to balance. Yeah, it's hard to balance.
When she's being hugged by water, she was so much more verbal, because she knew where she was. So oftentimes you'll see these kids like bumping into things, because that's how so she looks like an astronaut in zero gravity trying on their first spacewalk. Like, that's how she walked through Knoebels. But it was so busy that like I'm constantly grabbing her and like maneuvering, and she was having a hard time, and she wanted to go home. Like, I just dropped $140. We had these wristbands for all day, and by 2 hours in,
she's like, do you spend $140 at Knoebels?
Right? So they get you on the fact that it's free, and I love Knoebels. But like free parking, free admission. But if you want to ride a ride, you either have to get the tickets. Rides. So for 3 of us to get wristbands, it was was like $50 a pop. But so then you're like, all right, well, we're riding all the rides. Well, 2 hours in, she's like, I'm ready to go. And she's like, I'm out. Having meltdowns, and we're trying to like negotiate with her, because my younger daughter's wanting to ride. Like, we're trying to make it through, and it was ugly. At one point, I got her on the Whip It ride, the whipper thing, and she loved it, but she was upset getting into it. Luckily, they gave us a wristband to skip the lines. We were able to go to the handicapped entrance, and I'll tell you, that made a whole difference, because we would have never gotten through one ride if we had to wait in that line with her, and it would have ruined the entire experience. But like, I got her on, and I took a video of us, and she was crying, and I got her to talk to me, and she says, I'm worried. And I'm like, why are you worried? Because I want to go home. And she didn't have words. She didn't talk till she was almost 5. And so now I'm hearing her describe how she's feeling and why she's feeling that way. And it was, I caught a glimpse of it on video, because I'm like trying to also normalize that, like special needs parenting, and how it's not all pretty. It's like, she's a gorgeous looking girl, and you see some of these great photos out there, but like, not every moment's like, even the moment when I muted myself and I talked to her, she's screaming at the top of her lungs over here why she can't go outside. I'm like, baby, it's pouring rain right now. Like, and she can't go outside without an adult, because she might get something sensory might catch her, and next she's in the middle of the street and she's not paying attention. Like, when we first moved here, we had to get an alarm system on the house during COVID, because she started crawling out windows, and some guy came to our house because she was 2 blocks down, and we don't have sidewalks. We're not in a residential area. It's back road. So it's like, you sometimes see like those signs where it's like, autistic child lives here kind of thing. And it's meant to draw attention. And I don't think it does the job. That's why we didn't apply for one, because people don't really understand what it means, but it should mean like, hey, if you see a kid acting out of order, that's like in the middle of the street, like, they may not be a hoodlum on drugs. They may be an autistic kid chasing a butterfly.
But that's what you're saying, of like normalizing that the other times, not just this is because that's the thing of like, and I never mean to say this as like a a bad thing or anything like that, but it's like that's the challenging part. That's the things that people don't talk about. Like every time they have like a special needs kid, you see a social media account. It's always, this is the greatest, and what are we doing today, and how are we doing today, and this is great. I wouldn't change a thing. I would never change a thing in the world. And it's like there's part of me, and there's the pessimist, and it's just a bad part of my brain, but it's a realistic part of my brain where I'm like, I'm pretty sure you would change. You would change it.
It was like I was thinking about that yesterday. I was like, I don't know,
maybe not right now. Yeah,
but I was thinking about yesterday when we went to the guest services, because I'll go up with her to guest services whenever we anywhere, Disney on Ice, whatever. And we really started going up and talking to them. And like this woman was so sweet, because you're supposed to have filled out something ahead of time, but like they gave her and my younger daughter a band so that all four of us could go, because it was awesome. Like, yeah. And so like the people are so great, but like part of me was like, wow, like, yeah, like see, autism perks. We get to like, because Disney was a whole other thing, but like at the same time, like, no, would I, for that? And no, but like, it is a nice perk, because I'll tell you what, the reality is, like, I'm sure when we were getting on those rides ahead of the people who were on those lines are like, what's their handicap? And I'm, like, and so in the back of my head, I was waiting for somebody to say something and be like, oh, I'm sorry, are you my medical professional? Are you, are we talking HIPAA right now? Do you want to, like, I mean, like, I was like, should I walk with a limp? Like, but like the reality is, like, that would have been a different experience for us if she couldn't. She would have tried to lope through that line. Now you got me trying to barrel through the line after her. You'd be much more upset about that and her screaming behind you and you thinking that I should just discipline my kid better.
That's a bad kid, or that's whatever.
Yeah, like, because people don't know. Like, they don't know. Like, they're getting a glimpse, they're getting a snippet. So they say, don't judge a book by its cover. It's because you're coming in at a moment. It's like reading the headline but not reading the article, like you were talking about that other podcast. Like, that's the problem. You don't have the full story. And do I really need to give you the full story? No, you don't deserve that full story.
It's none of your business. And that's the thing is it's ultimately it's nobody's business, but that's the thing when you can help by having that. And because that's what I want to clarify is, like, I don't mean that people, and I truly mean that what they mean is they would never, they wouldn't.
Yeah, I know.
Go back in time. I love my kid exactly how it is. We've earned this, but it's also like, I'm sure when they're screaming or they're not doing something or they're punching you or something like that, you would be like, man, it would be really easy if you were just having a
why can't we and I didn't mean that. It was in my head because it just happened yesterday, so I was thinking about but yeah, like, I think you're right, because when she, every time for the longest time, now she's great, but like when for 3 or 4 years there, like, dinner was like gearing up for war. So like we both come home from long days at work, and now we got to gear up to like fight with her to like do all these little therapies on how, like, okay, just kiss the green bean. Okay, now lick the green. Like, and it was like there was no having a family dinner enjoying experience. This was like gearing up for war, and me and my wife being a tag team to say, okay, I got in there and I rolled that bull. Now I got to get out and take a break. You got to get in there and ride the bull for a little bit. And I'll tell you what, now like the eating thing, not an issue anymore, but it's like whatever the concern is, you just have like potty training. We lived our life for 9 months at 15-minute increments because it just took her. She didn't potty train until she was 5. She didn't talk till she was 5. It's like all of these things that were coming so easy for even my younger daughter or my friends' kids, like, oh my God, like it was like riding a bull. So I'm like, you know what? When I got on that ride yesterday in front of all those people, I'm like, this was for the green beans. Fuck you all. You know what I mean?
I earned this. Yeah.
If you knew what dinner was like every day for us.
The fast pass legitimately is for the parent in that case, because it's like trust me,
we deserve a normal family moment. We deserve a picturesque moment where we're on the antique cars going by the Phoenix roller coaster, and we didn't have to wait in that line, and because she'd have been crying the whole time, and now we all would have been in chaos. And now why did we spend $140? This is a nightmare.
Exactly. And that's the thing. That's a beautiful sentiment, and I really do appreciate the fact that you're doing what you do personally as well as professionally for children's development, helping the youth, and just all around just being a funny and considerate good person. I really appreciate you being here and and doing all those things, Jay. I really
Thank
do.
you. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me. This is great.
This has been an incredible conversation. I really hope I didn't cause any trouble in the house or anything like that by keeping you here.
Nope, no, I had it planned out. Yeah, my wife and I have Google Calendar, and everything's like it's crazy but beautiful. It all just flows.
We have that too. We have a shared calendar, which was my wife's idea, which she very much does not use anymore. So so yeah, I understand what you're talking about. We use it mainly for the shared shopping list. That really helps. But
Yeah,
do you have any shows coming up? You're talking about some
yeah.
mics. I want to. What mic should
So
I hit up and come hang out with Jay this week? Where should I?
so tomorrow I'm gonna be a couple mics this week. Monday I'll be at Great American Pubs restarting in Phoenixville. So that's I think it's like a 6:30 list, 7 o'clock show at the second floor of Great American Pub in Phoenixville. I run a mic on Wednesdays at a place called Tuned Up at 6:30 in Spring City. Thursday, I just started hosting for Comedy Explosion at Exton at the Exton Hotel on like 815 North Pottstown Pike. It's Route 100. That's another one that's new. It's just started. It's been very great, really growing. It's been a lot of fun. That's 8 o'clock on Thursdays. And then I won't be there this week because I have a show and Rivet in Pottstown just started. Pottstown's really kind of revitalizing their main street. It's called High Street.
I've seen a lot about Pottstown lately.
So they have like two beer gardens there.
Oh, yeah.
And so next to one of the beer gardens it used to be the old New York Plaza building. I think Steve George has been running that room, and it's called Rivet.
No relation.
Yeah. And I'm on a show with Mark Riccadonna and Lemaire Lee, and Richie Byrne is the headliner, and so that's gonna be a really great show. That's Thursday.
Fire lineup.
Thursday at 7:30, and then I have my Tuned Up monthly show. It's going to be September 17th. Dave Primiano's headlining. I have Jesse Dram from Philly on there, Andrew Thomas from Philly, and Gina Gibbons. I think she's from Delaware. So that's a free show, September 17th, Saturday at Tuned Up on 7 o'clock. Yeah, and it's been great. I just picked up a weekend at Church of Satire out in Hanover in October. I'll be hosting over there October 7th and 8th, and nice. I think I'm going to be featuring New Year's Eve weekend there as well. So I'm excited. I got a lot of stuff going on. So yeah, follow me on Instagram, Jay Yoder Comedy. I actually just joined TikTok this week.
Ooh,
so also
you're gonna kill it on TikTok.
Also Jay Yoder Comedy and Facebook Jay Yoder Comedy. So just Jay Yoder Comedy on any of the platforms you and the kids are doing.
I'll say I will piggyback off of that because I will also plug your Instagram. It's very, very interesting. That's why I think you are set. I have actually sent you to a couple of teacher friends of mine.
Like, oh, sweet.
That aren't comics. You know what I mean? Like to say like,
those are my favorite shows. I've done 2 at Punchline now. Yeah. So fun. Those teachers we're ready to laugh. So like,
because you guys you guys are like, if you have that outlet where you can kind of go and invent a little bit and kind of do that and have a creative outlet. Yeah. Like you have the creative outlet of teaching and speaking, public speaking and stuff like that in the classroom and having an effect on their lives. That is so much more than just making them laugh or entertain. Like, yeah. So the fact that you can have that like shut off switch where you're like, I don't have to develop anybody here. I don't have to worry about anybody here. Like realistically like that. And I love the fact that you have that again, that consideration and just that and true, I would say true comedic talent and true comedic timing for sure. Like I really enjoy hearing you speak.
I appreciate you saying that.
I can't imagine that teaching doesn't help that also, you know what I mean? Like a lot of like nervousness and stage fright. I was in bands a lot when I was a kid. That helped out, I think, a lot. Yeah. Like, with being in front and performing and stuff. So I appreciate you being here again. Like I said, check out some of the other podcasts I do. Drag the Lake with Andy Malafarina, as well as Falls Count Anywhere, Proper Ebonics, and 6 a.m. Some episodes on there. Baby Mermaid Productions, anywhere you are. You're obviously here on YouTube, but also Instagram and Facebook, Pat George, all that stuff. Check out all the fun things that I am doing. I don't think I have any shows coming up in the near future, so just go to all the J shows. And also, I'll probably go to some of those mics as well. So I'll probably be seeing you in person.
I'd love to see it. That'd be great.
I love to catch up with you some more then. But in the meantime, thanks everybody for watching the show. Make sure that you call anytime you can. You can call or text anytime, 717-559-2971. Leave a voicemail, leave a text message. We'll read it or play it on the show. And we love you. Goodbye, everybody.